They drained $99,000 from my credit card, and I only found out when I saw the venue on Instagram. My mom cried, said it was for Brian's wedding, that I was the only one she could count on. I'd always been the good daughter. But when I hesitated, she called me cold, heartless, said if I loved my family, I'd prove it. They used my name, my credit, my silence, and still blamed me for making a scene. I thought I was helping. Turns out I was the sacrificial lamb, and I was never meant to leave the altar. My mother's 60th birthday was hosted at a private estate on the outskirts of Austin. Chandeliers, gold-trimmed chairs, custom ice sculptures. She wanted elegance but southern. I paid for every inch of it. No one mentioned that. The guests toasted her grace, her strength, her ability to raise such wonderful children. Brian, of course, stole the spotlight. He strutted to the stage, grinning like a celebrity, and unveiled a framed digital art piece, a garish blend of pastel roses and code. An NFT, he declared proudly, valued at $1 million. The crowd clapped. Mom beamed. Only I knew that same gift had been bought with the seed money I lent Brian for his tech startup 3 months ago. He had promised it was for legal fees, but I smiled. I always did. Mom pulled me aside later, held my hands, her diamond rings glinting in the candlelight. "Emma, I don't say this enough," she whispered, eyes damp. "But with a daughter like you, I can die happy." My chest tightened. I wanted to believe her. I wanted to feel proud. But the words felt like velvet covering glass. Beautiful, fragile, and sharp. Later, I excused myself to wash my hands. The powder room was attached to her bedroom. As I reached for a towel, the door to her closet was slightly ajar. I shouldn't have looked, but I did. Tucked between boxes of family albums and old Chanel handbags was a locked file box, not locked well. Inside, stacked in neat rows, were papers bearing my name, credit reports, tax statements, authorization forms with what looked like my signature, but I had never signed those. I closed the lid and walked back into the party. My hands were shaking, but I smiled through it. The next morning, she called. Her voice was cracking, soft, like tissue paper. "Emma, I didn't want to say anything last night. I wanted your birthday gift to shine." It wasn't my birthday. "It's about your brother," she continued. "You know how long he's waited for this. For love, stability, marriage. You know how we've all worried about him." I sat on my apartment floor, barefoot in yesterday's jeans. "What are you saying?" She sighed. "He and Marissa are getting married, but weddings, you know, they cost money. And after the incident with his last investor, well, he can't get approved for much." "And?" I asked, already feeling the noose tighten. "You could help. Just a bit. One last time. Then we'll handle the rest. I promise." Her voice cracked again, perfectly timed. "Help how?" "Just the venue deposit, the caterer, the tuxes. Nothing you can't afford, sweetheart. You always said family comes first." I didn't answer. She pushed harder. "I know you're busy, so I already took care of it. I used the card ending in 9802. You remember, it's the one we added me to back when I helped you co-sign for your student loan." I hadn't used that card in years. She kept going, as if she hadn't just detonated a bomb. "Don't worry. I've written out a full repayment plan. See, if we use part of your father's pension and the inheritance from Grandma that's still tied up, it'll be fine." I opened my laptop. There it was. $47,000 in pending charges from 3 vendors, all billed under Golden Promise Wedding Services. One of them had posted on Instagram just an hour ago. "Congratulations to the Michaels family on booking our full luxury package." My last name. "Mom," I said quietly, "you didn't ask. You took." A long pause, then her tone shifted, cold like winter under lace. "Emma, I raised you better than this. Your brother needs you. You're being ungrateful." "I didn't agree to this." "You always agree," she snapped, the tears vanishing. "This is what family means. Sacrifice. You're not selfish, are you?" That word landed hard. Selfish. It wrapped around my throat like a familiar scarf, one I'd worn since childhood. I hung up. An hour later, I received a text from Brian. "Thanks for stepping up. Didn't expect you to be classy. Proud of you." I stared at the screen. That wasn't gratitude. That was entitlement. The next morning, I tried to remove Mom from the card. The bank refused. "Her name is on the account," the clerk said flatly. "Joint access. You'd need her signature to revoke it." They used my credit, my name, my silence. And when I questioned it, I was labeled the problem. If you were me and your mother was crying on the phone, telling you it was for the family, would you say no? Because I didn't. And that's where everything began to rot. The first email came just after dawn. My phone buzzed with a fraud alert, and for a split second, I thought maybe the bank had finally caught on. Instead, the subject line read, "Thank you for your purchase." I opened it. Then another and another. 3 different vendors, 3 days in a row. A total of $99,000, all charged to my account. Venue, catering, luxury floral design. My stomach flipped. I dialed my mother, straight to voicemail. I tried again. This time, the line connected, but she cut it off after 3 seconds. I called Brian. He answered on the second ring, his voice casual, almost smug. "Emma, big day coming up. Excited?" "What did you do?" I hissed. "You mean, what did we do?" he corrected. "Come on, sis. This isn't just a wedding. It's an institution. It's the most important day of my life, and you get to be part of it in a way that actually matters." "You charged $99,000. He laughed. "And worth every cent." "This isn't about money. It's about legacy. Don't you get it? You've always been the backbone of this family. Now you get to be the foundation of mine." I couldn't breathe. "Brian, this is fraud." "It's destiny," he said, and hung up. I drove to the family house. It was lit up like a showroom, florists and planners coming and going, deliveries stacked at the door. On the lawn, a massive banner stretched across the entrance in glittering gold, with gratitude to our golden sponsor, Emma Michaels. Guests' lists were taped to the wall, 500 names printed on parchment, color-coded for seating. My name wasn't on the list of guests, only at the top under sponsor. Inside, my mother spotted me and clapped her hands. "Emma, darling, you made it!" "Isn't it magnificent?" I pointed to the banner. "What the hell is this?" Her face softened like butter under heat. "Sweetheart, don't be so dramatic. Everyone knows you've always supported your brother. This is just a public acknowledgement." "I never agreed." She cut me off with a smile. "If it bothers you, we can move you to the regular seating. Would that make you feel better?" My throat went dry. Regular seating. As if I wasn't family. As if I wasn't blood. I left before I screamed. That night, I called the bank, desperate. I told them I wanted to freeze the card, stop further charges. The clerk placed me on hold for 15 minutes, then returned with a sigh. "I'm sorry, Ms. Michaels. The account is joint. Your mother has equal access. We can't revoke her authorization without her consent." "She's been signing things I never approved," I shouted. "Legally, her signature carries the same weight as yours." The line clicked dead. I stared at the dark ceiling of my apartment, my hands trembling. Every time I thought I had a grip on my life, the ground shifted beneath me. The next day, I tried confronting my father. He sat in his recliner, TV blaring some old Western. I stood in front of him, blocking the screen. "Dad, this has to stop. It's theft. It's ruining me." He didn't look at me, didn't blink. "We're old," he said flatly. "Brian is the future. Don't fight what's inevitable." It was as if he had rehearsed it, as if my pain was scripted and his line had already been assigned. Later, my phone buzzed again. A text from Brian. "If you make noise now, you'll lose everything. Don't ruin this for yourself." I stared at the words until they blurred. Lose everything. What else was there to lose? Hours later, scrolling through Instagram, I saw his story. A picture of him in a tux, arm around Marissa, champagne in hand. The caption read, "Today, the wedding, tomorrow, the investment. The real journey begins." My heart sank to the floor. He wasn't even hiding it. My brother had turned my sacrifice into his launch pad, my identity into his bank account, and the world was cheering him on. I closed the app. my hands trembling. The walls of my apartment felt smaller than ever. Something inside me broke, but not the way they expected. The wedding was staged like a royal coronation. Crystal chandeliers shimmered over velvet-draped tables, a string quartet played in the corner, and photographers darted between the crowd as though they were covering Hollywood stars. I walked in quietly, a guest at an event my name had funded, and for a moment I convinced myself I might still belong. But belonging requires permission. A security guard in a black suit stepped into my path. "Ma'am, this area is reserved for VIP guests." I held out my invitation, embossed with gold. He scanned it, frowned, and shook his head. "Your name isn't on the list." "That's impossible," I snapped. "I paid for this." He stiffened. "Step aside, ma'am. I don't want trouble." My mother appeared from behind the dais, her smile poised, her champagne glass glittering. "Oh, don't fuss," she said loudly enough for the nearest tables to hear. "She's not on the list because she isn't part of the VIP program. She's just the financial sponsor." 500 guests turned their heads. Murmurs spread like wildfire. "She's the one who paid?" someone whispered. "She doesn't even have a seat?" Another chuckled. And then my mother, smiling wider, delivered the blade. "Don't mistake her role. She's the bank, not the bride. Let's not confuse things." Laughter rippled across the hall. I felt the air leave my lungs. Before I could move, Brian stepped onto the stage, microphone in hand. His tuxedo shimmered under the spotlights, his smile sharp as glass. "I think it's time we honored some truths," he said, his voice booming across the speakers. "You all know me as the favored son, but you don't know why. Tonight's as good a time as any." He pointed at me. "Emma isn't really my sister. She was adopted, a charity case. My parents took her in because they pitied her." The room gasped, a collective intake of breath that stabbed deeper than any blade. "That's why she pays," Brian continued, smirking. "It's her way of saying thank you for being rescued." The floor tilted beneath me. My hands shook. The crowd's eyes burned through my skin. I tried to speak, but my throat closed. My vision blurred, then tunneled. I staggered, my body betraying me. Cameras flashed as if documenting a spectacle. I collapsed onto the marble floor. No one moved to help. Phones rose, recording. Gasps turned to whispers, whispers turned to chuckles. And I lay there, consciousness slipping, realizing I had never been part of their family, not by choice, not by blood, not by love. I woke to the antiseptic sting of a hospital room. The ceiling light hummed. A nurse was adjusting the IV drip, barely glancing at me as she slid a clipboard onto the table. "Sign here for payment," she said flatly. I glanced at the sheet. My credit card number stared back at me, the same account already drowning under the wedding charges. "I can't." "It's already processed," she interrupted. "Your mother authorized it." My breath caught. I grabbed my phone with trembling hands and logged into my credit account. The numbers rolled upward like a slot machine. 99,000 had become 150, then 200. By the time I scrolled through the list, the total balance read $312,000. I dropped the phone. My chest ached. I had lost more than money. I had lost every boundary, every shred of autonomy. My entire identity was leveraged against me. The monitor beside my bed beeped louder. The nurse adjusted something, unconcerned. Hours later, when the room was quiet, I checked my email. At the top was a message from an unknown address. The subject line was plain: "The truth." I hesitated, then opened it. "If you want to know who your mother really is, meet me at the old storage warehouse on 4th Street, Tuesday, midnight." No name, no explanation. Just coordinates. I should have deleted it, should have ignored it, but something in my chest stirred, a need sharper than fear. 2 nights later, I stood before the warehouse. Rusted shutters, broken windows, the air thick with mold and dust. My footsteps echoed as I pushed the door open. Inside, stacks of boxes lined the walls. I pulled one open and froze. Folders, neatly labeled, each bearing my name. Tax filings, loan applications, credit card authorizations, signatures I had never written. Debts I had never owed. A paper trail spanning a decade. My life had been stolen in increments, slowly, methodically, until I was nothing but a ledger in someone else's book. And every page pointed back to her. My mother. The warehouse smelled of mildew and dust, but what lay inside reeked of something worse. Betrayal dressed as paperwork. I pulled out file after file, my name stamped across every page, every document, every debt. Mortgage applications I had never signed. Life insurance policies with my name forged across the bottom. Even a home equity loan secured against a house I didn't own. I sat on the cold floor, pages spread around me like a crime scene. Each sheet was a piece of evidence, proof that my mother hadn't just stolen my money. She had stolen my existence. The files were meticulous, copies of my driver's license, social security numbers, entire loan histories forged under my identity. Some were almost 10 years old. The picture became horrifyingly clear. I wasn't just being used. I was being erased brick by brick until only the debts remained. And then I saw it, an old insurance form stamped with both my mother's and father's signatures. His handwriting was unmistakable. He knew. He had always known. My throat burned as I tried to process it. For years he had said nothing, done nothing, while she bled me dry. His silence wasn't ignorance, it was complicity. A sound behind me snapped me out of my haze. I turned, clutching a file like a weapon. A woman stood in the doorway, backlit by the glow of a street lamp. Tall, blonde, eyes sharp with a bitterness I recognized in myself. "Don't worry," she said quietly. "I'm not here to hurt you." "Who are you?" She stepped closer. "Marissa, Brian's ex-wife." I froze. He was never married. Her laugh was hollow. "Of course that's what they told you, but it happened. And it ended the way all things in your family end. Me carrying the debt, him walking free." The floor seemed to tilt beneath me. "Why contact me?" "Because you're next," she said simply. "You've been next for years. I thought if I stayed quiet it would pass, but it never does. They pick one target and they bleed them until there's nothing left." Her voice shook as she gestured toward the boxes. "That's what they did to me, too. Only difference is, I escaped before they destroyed me completely." I stared at her, searching for lies, but her eyes were mirrors. I saw my pain reflected in hers. "You want to stop them?" she asked. "Yes." The word tore out of me before I could second-guess it. "Then we do it together." The plan began with a phone call. A trap. Marissa coached me through it, her voice calm, deliberate. "You don't confront her. You lure her. Make her think you're giving in." I dialed my mother, my hand trembling as I pressed the phone to my ear. She answered sweetly, as though we hadn't gone to war. "Emma, darling, have you come to your senses?" "I want to make this right," I said, keeping my voice even. "I've been selfish. I want to talk about how I can help cover everything, but I need to understand where the money went. Can we discuss repayment?" There was a pause, then the faintest chuckle. "That's my girl. I knew you'd see reason. Of course we can talk. I've kept records. It's all in your name anyway." Every word was recorded. Every casual confession. Every acknowledgement of her theft. The perfect rope to hang her with. When the call ended, Marissa and I stared at each other in silence. She nodded once. "That's enough." The next day, I walked into a lawyer's office with a box of files under one arm and the recording saved on 3 different drives. The lawyer, a graying man with a reputation for tearing apart fraud cases, flipped through the documents and whistled. "This isn't just fraud," he said. "This is identity theft, financial abuse, racketeering if we stretch it. You could bury them." "I don't want to bury anyone," I said, though my voice trembled. "I just want my life back." He nodded. "Then we'll start with a civil suit and move to criminal if they fight. With this much evidence, the DA will take an interest." The complaint was filed within the week. Emma Michaels versus Linda and Thomas Michaels, with associated charges against Brian Michaels. Within days, subpoenas began to fly. Brian's accounts were flagged. Large transfers labeled business investment raised red flags. The IRS opened an inquiry. His world began to crumble as quickly as he had built it on my back. For the first time in years, I felt like I was breathing. Then the phone rang. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something told me to pick it up. The voice on the other end was low, deliberate. My father. Emma. I froze. You don't understand what you're doing. If you continue, this family will be destroyed. I swallowed hard. It's already destroyed. There was a long silence, then his words, heavy and sharp. If you push this, you'll regret it. Do you really want to be the one who tears us apart? His voice cracked, and for a moment I heard the man who had taught me to ride a bike, who had kissed my scraped knees. Then I remembered the signature on those forms, his silent consent to my ruin. Yes, I whispered. The line went dead, and for the first time in my life I didn't feel guilty. I felt alive. The courthouse smelled of polished wood and old secrets. Rows of reporters filled the benches, their cameras flashing as I walked in. For years I had been invisible, my sacrifices hidden behind family pride. But now every eye was on me, and for once I wasn't ashamed. My mother sat at the defense table in a navy suit, her hair perfectly coiffed, as if presentation could erase the truth. Brian lounged beside her, smirking at the crowd. My father was absent, his silence now louder than ever. The judge entered, the gavel cracked, and the trial began. The prosecution laid out the evidence. Forged documents, fraudulent loans, forged signatures. My bank statements projected on a giant screen, line after line of theft. The recording of my mother's call played, her voice dripping with casual malice. It's all in your name anyway. The crowd gasped. My stomach twisted, but I didn't look away. When it was my turn to speak, I rose. My lawyer had warned me to be concise, but my voice carried years of silence cracking open. Family, I said, staring at the jury, should be where we feel safe. It should be the place we're loved without condition. But my family turned me into an ATM. They used my name, my credit, my silence. And when I resisted, they called me selfish. A daughter is not a sacrifice. A sister is not a sponsor. A woman is not a bank. The words hung in the air, heavy as stone. Later that afternoon, the hashtag began to trend. Justice for Emma. Live streams spread my testimony across platforms. Strangers flooded my inbox with support. For the first time, my story was bigger than my shame. The defense tried to paint me as dramatic, ungrateful, but then Brian was called to the stand. His arrogance betrayed him. "Did you authorize these charges?" the prosecutor asked. He laughed. "Of course not. Emma did. That's her role. She's always been the provider." "Her role?" "Yeah, I was raised to know she existed to make my life easier. She pays, I live. That's the deal. That's how family works." Gasps rippled through the courtroom. Even the judge's face hardened. The prosecutor pressed. "So you're admitting you were taught that your sister existed to sacrifice for you?" Brian leaned back, smug. "Exactly." In that moment, every mask dropped. The jury saw what I had lived with all my life, entitlement dressed as blood ties. The verdict came swiftly. My mother was found guilty of fraud, identity theft, and financial abuse. The judge's voice rang clear. "The court orders restitution. Linda Michaels is to repay $312,000 plus accrued interest, effective immediately." The words struck like thunder. My mother's face cracked, her mask shattering as the gavel came down. Brian stared in disbelief, his arrogance draining to ash. For the first time, I saw him look small. The trial ended, but the unraveling had only begun. In the weeks that followed, everything collapsed. My mother declared bankruptcy. The community that once admired her turned cold. The church whispered, neighbors crossed the street to avoid her. My father left, quietly, with no forwarding address. I wondered if he was running from her or from himself. Brian spiraled. The woman he was engaged to left him, taking their son. Without money or influence, He was nothing but a bitter man screaming at shadows. His custody rights were stripped away after a public breakdown. They tried to contact me. Voicemails, letters, even a handwritten note slipped under my apartment door. Apologies, explanations, excuses. But I never responded. One afternoon, I walked out of the courthouse free of hearings, lawyers, and debt. My name was clean. My accounts restored. I stood on the steps in the sunlight, inhaling air that felt mine again. For the first time in decades, I was not afraid. That night, I deleted every voicemail, burned every letter. I told myself, the past cannot claim me anymore, but freedom has its own shadows. A week later, as I sipped coffee in my kitchen, my phone buzzed with a new message. No sender, just words glowing on the screen. I know your mother isn't the only one. Do you want the truth about your father? I froze, the mug shaking in my hand. The war I thought was over had only just begun. The book came first. Pages filled with the kind of silence I had carried for years, turned into sentences that refused to be ignored. I titled it The Cost of Silence, because silence had always been my most expensive currency. It launched quietly, but within weeks it climbed the New York Times bestseller list, fueled not by marketing but by the thousands who saw themselves in my story. Emails poured in. Women, men, children of fractured families, survivors of betrayal, victims of the very people who should have loved them most. Each letter whispered the same thing. You put into words what I could not. I realized then my pain wasn't mine alone. It was a chorus waiting for someone to sing the first note. With the advance from the book, I founded an organization, Golden Daughters. The name was deliberate, a tribute to every child raised to be the shining one, the dependable one, the sacrificial lamb disguised as a star. We built a hotline, a legal aid fund, a network of therapists. The work consumed me, but it gave me back something my family had stolen, purpose on my own terms. On a live interview one evening, the host leaned forward. Some people say what you did was revenge. Was it? I smiled softly, shaking my head. No, I didn't seek revenge. I sought my life. Revenge destroys. Taking back my freedom saved me. The clip went viral. Millions viewed, millions debated. But I didn't read the comments. The validation no longer mattered. Months later, I left America. Not in flight, but in choice. I rented a small cabin near the coast of Iceland where the mountains leaned into the sea and the air tasted of salt and snow. Here, the world slowed down. I planted a small garden behind the cabin, rows of carrots and potatoes that grew stubbornly through the rocky soil. I adopted a shepherd dog from a rescue shelter. His loyalty was uncomplicated, his love without transaction. At dawn, we walked along the cliffs, the waves crashing below, the horizon endless. In the afternoons, I opened my cabin to the village children. I taught them simple lessons: how to budget, how to save, how to understand the power of money before it could be turned into chains. Their laughter filled the wooden walls, and I thought, this is what family should sound like. People sometimes asked if I missed my old life, my blood family. I always answered truthfully. I miss the idea of them, not the reality. One evening, after class, a teenager lingered. She had wide eyes, full of questions she couldn't ask aloud. Finally, she whispered, "How did you know it was okay to leave?" I took a long breath, then gave her the truth I had fought to learn. Because loving yourself is not betrayal. Sometimes choosing yourself is the only way to survive. Her eyes filled with tears, and she nodded. I knew then the cycle could be broken, one child at a time. Years passed, and I no longer measured time by lawsuits or debt statements. My worth wasn't a ledger anymore. It was in the soil I turned, the meals I cooked, the voices of children who learned that family could be chosen, built, created. When journalists tracked me down, hoping for updates, I rarely obliged. I didn't need to prove anything anymore. I was free, but the story never truly ended. On a quiet evening, as the northern lights spilled across the sky, a documentary crew visited to film my work with Golden Daughters. Their cameras lingered as I prepared tea, as I stroked the head of my old shepherd, as I taught the children math through laughter. At the end of the shoot, they asked for a closing shot. I rolled up my sleeve. The camera zoomed in on my wrist, where a small tattoo curved across my skin. No blood. No chains. A statement. A reminder. A vow. I looked directly into the lens, my voice steady. Family is not blood. Family is love, and freedom is worth every loss. The screen faded to black, but the question remained, floating like smoke in the air. Would you dare choose yourself, even if it meant letting go of your blood?